Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Fine, founder of Joey's Legacy. I would like to bring you this episode regarding the subject of Convenia, uh, an antibiotic that has its friends as well as its detractors. I'm one of the detractors because uh, Joey's encounter with Convenia cost him his life, as opined by three veterinarians who reviewed his records after he passed. So let's get started. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to show you or read to you actually from the administrative complaint filed by the state of Florida against the veterinarian, Dr. Rinderneck. And here we go. On June 19, 2017, Joey was presented to the respondent for an examination because he was vomiting, had diarrhea, blood in his stool, and loss of appetite. The respondent failed to note the pulse and respiration of Joey in the medical records. Respondent failed to note or address Joey's vomiting. Respondent failed to offer to perform blood work. Respondent gave Joey a Convenia injection. Respondent failed to note in the medical records the amount, concentration, route, and time of the Convenia injection. Respondent provided metronidazole syrup for Joey. Respondent failed to note in the medical records the amount and concentration of the metronidazole syrup. On June 20th, the next morning, Joey returned to the clinic because he had not improved, and Joey was seen by Dr. Hendon. So Dr. Hendon was Joey's veterinarian for years, never a complaint, never a problem. And a lot of you that have come to me with your stories and need for assistance have told me about your own personal guilt trip, what you should have done, what you could have done. If you had known this, you would have done that, that kind of a thing. And I've got a guilt trip story that I've dealt with very heavily initially, but 6 years later, it still troubles me, but obviously you find a way to forgive yourself. So anyway, Dr. Hendon did blood work, which should have been done the day before, and he determined that Joey was in renal failure. And I'll tell you right now, there are many drugs, renal-friendly drugs, that Joey could have been given the day before. The decision to give Convenia has been determined to be, well, the decision to give Convenia, in my opinion, was motivated by greed. Convenia, it was at the time about $100 for an injection. I don't know what it is today, 6 years later, but three veterinarians told me after Joey died that one of them actually said this would be the Z drug in a list of A to Z drugs I would have given Joey. There's a lot of renal friendly drugs that don't harm the kidneys that Joey could have been given. In fact, Convenia is known to be nephrotoxic, in other words, destructive to the kidneys. So anyway, Dr. Hendon kept Joey the rest of that day and overnight trying to save his life. Unfortunately, the next morning, his condition worsened even further. And Dr. Hendon called us and told us that best thing to do is just to, euthanize Joey. He was having very difficult breathing, and his lungs were filling up. His body was filling up with fluid. His kidneys couldn't excrete the amount of fluid in his body. So anyway, we made the horrible decision to euthanize him on the 21st of June in 2017. So count one of the administrative complaint filed by the Florida Board of Veterinary Medicine cites Dr. Rinderneck for failing to recommend blood work on June 19th. And by failing to recommend blood work, they determine that's below the standard of care for a reasonably prudent veterinarian. Failing to address or note Joey's vomiting is below the standard of care for a reasonably prudent veterinarian. Giving a convenient injection without running blood work to check Joey's renal function is below the standard of care for a reasonably prudent veterinarian. That one bears repeating. Please listen. And if you've ever had a Convenia experience, keep this in mind. Giving a Convenia injection without running blood work to check Joey's renal function is below the standard of care for a reasonably prudent veterinarian. Then it goes on to cite section 474.214 1R Florida statutes, provides that a licensee may be subject to discipline for being guilty of incompetence or negligence by failing to practice medicine with that level of care, skill, and treatment which is recognized by a reasonably prudent veterinarian. So based on the foregoing, respondent violated that section of the Florida statutes when respondent failed to recommend blood work, failed to address Joey's vomiting, and by giving a Convenia injection without verifying Joey's renal function. Okay, so, there are those that love convenience, work well for their companion animals. That's great. I think we're all happy to hear that. But there are untold number of stories regarding Convenia where the drug caused harm, or it's speculated that it caused the death of the companion animal, sometimes within an hour or two. Convenia is an antibiotic in injection form that's supposed to be given every 7 to 14 days. It eliminates the need for owners to give their dogs pills on a daily basis. Convenia is a takeoff of the word convenience, and that's how it got its name. It's a convenience for the owner. And anyway, our family has suffered greatly since the loss of Joey. Many of you have lost your animals as well from Convenia. And all I could suggest is, if you haven't had a bad experience with Convenia, be cautious and be aware of what happened to Joey and so many other animals. And if your veterinarian requests it, ask questions, ask a lot of questions before that drug is administered, because there are a lot of other, as I mentioned earlier, renal friendly drugs that will not, that are not nephrotoxic to kidneys, and a lot less expensive. Again, in my opinion, this drug was given in this case because of the money, because it's an expensive drug. That's Joey's story, and take good care of your babies.